Incredible love story. Millionaire CEO discovers hidden passion for single mom on blind date. Jonathan Blake stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his high-rise office in downtown Chicago, his empire sprawling beneath him like a beautifully crafted illusion. At 35, he was the epitome of success: gorgeous suits, a thriving tech startup, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Yet there was an emptiness gnawing at him. Numbers, projections, and spreadsheets filled his life, but the laughter of genuine connection seemed like an echo from a distant past. When his friend suggested a blind date with a single mother, Jonathan's first instinct was to decline, yet the hint of curiosity whispered within him, leading to reluctant acceptance. At the bustling restaurant, he found himself across from Lily Hart. The reality of her world struck him, the worn edges of her smile, the quiet strength in her eyes. She was nothing like the polished executives that surrounded him daily. An aura of warmth wrapped around her like a cozy blanket, contrasting starkly with his corporate charm. He should have felt at ease, but an unexpected tension crept in as conversation flowed about values of family, hard work, and the essence of success. As the night progressed, Jonathan felt a connection he hadn't anticipated. However, when Lily shared her fears of being judged as a single parent, unease settled in the pit of his stomach. He hesitated, torn between the admiration for her courage and discomfort with societal expectations. Could he really step into her world, a world where money didn't matter as much as character? His mind raced with conflicting thoughts, each demanding attention. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as their relationship began to blossom, Jonathan's professional life took a turn for the worse. His business partner, ever the opportunist, seized on gossip of their connection to launch a campaign undermining Jonathan's commitment to family values. The whispers in the boardroom grew more sinister, feeding off the contrast between his privileged background and Lily's struggles. Jonathan's heart pounded in his chest. Each meeting felt like a trial. Did he defend her, risking it all for love? Or did he retreat into the safety of his corporate armor? An inner battle raged, leaving him torn. He remembered sleepless nights as a child, watching his parents sacrifice for a better life. Wasn't that the essence of love? His palms felt clammy as he prepared for an important board meeting, aware that the tension in the air would be suffocating. When he finally found the courage to speak up, a voice broke through from the back, raising their own challenges, a reminder of the stark economic divide that loomed over him. Jonathan's breath hitched, and he felt those familiar doubts crawl back in. What would it mean to stand up for Lily, to show the world that wealth alone didn't define success? With the pressure of expectations growing heavier, Jonathan faced a decision that could change everything: risk it all for the chance at something real or protect the fragile empire and status he'd built. The stakes had never felt higher, and yet the true cost of silence hung over him, unrelenting as the intense storm outside echoed his inner turmoil. Jonathan took a deep breath, steadying himself against the wall of anxiety that threatened to pull him under. There was a part of him that craved the structured chaos of the boardroom, a place where he had always found validation in numbers and strategies. But now, as he faced the grumbling murmurs of his colleagues, their eyes plotted against him like vultures waiting for a falter, he encountered a different kind of turmoil. He realized that the stakes were not just fiscal, they were personal. Through the din of corporate critique, Jonathan's thoughts returned to Lily. He imagined her soft laughter and the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her son, a light so different from the glow of success that filled his office. He was slowly unearthing parts of himself that he hadn't known existed: the vulnerability, the compassion, and most importantly, the courage to embrace love unencumbered by societal expectations. As the meeting progressed, Jonathan's inner monologue intensified. Every time he considered voicing his support for Lily, the flickering image of his father's disappointed face surfaced. Hadn't his father always taught him that the world was unforgiving, especially towards those who dared to break from conventions? Shouldn't he seek to distance himself from any perceived weakness? Yet, the very thought of turning his back on Lily felt like betrayal. With each question posed during the meeting, Jonathan felt himself retreating further into silence, words cascading like rocks in a river. There was an inevitable weight dragging him down. Then, in a moment of clarity, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the glass. A man in a tailored suit, yet anguish lurked in his eyes. He was being forced to confront the most important decision of his life. The fear of vulnerability was palpable, yet the warmth of authenticity beckoned him. Finally, during a lull in the conversation, Jonathan ventured a calculated risk. "We're all familiar with the metrics of success," he began, his voice steadied by resolve. "But we often overlook the human aspect that drives our purpose. I think it's time we consider what truly matters, not just our profit margins, but the values that guide us in our daily lives. Love, resilience, and commitment are just as crucial." Awkward silence filled the room, a stark contrast to the whirring hum that had accompanied the earlier discussions. Faces shifted, surprise sparking in some eyes while others clouded with judgment. The fissure of tension stretched tighter, but Jonathan felt something shift within him. He had taken a stand and there was no going back now. Even the weather outside heightened the heaviness. Thunder rolled ominously, mirroring the storm in his heart, but it only fueled his determination. When the meeting ended, the cold looks of dissent lingered. As he stepped out into the rain-soaked streets, the bitter chill reminded him that stepping outside his comfort zone came with risk. But as the raindrops danced around him, he smiled. His phone buzzed in his pocket, an unexpected message from Lily asking how he was holding up. The warmth of her words wrapped around him like a lifeline. He grinned, realizing that taking that one small step for her had unraveled something profound in himself. But with that sense of completeness came a haunting thought. What if his bold move alienated his team further? As he turned toward the glow of the nearby cafe, Jonathan knew he was on the cusp of something greater than he had ever imagined. Each decision now held the potential to redefine his world and his relationship with Lily. The rain continued to pour, cascading around him as if echoing his own internal flood of doubt and excitement. Should he share the news of his courage with Lily, or protect her from the backlash he feared? In that moment, standing at the crossroads of love and ambition, he knew he had to make a choice. It was time to confront not only his colleagues, but also the deeper implications of his affections for Lily. The very foundation of his identity was at stake. Could he unify these disparate parts of himself, or would the fractures deepen? With his heart pounding, Jonathan took a step forward. The moment of truth approached. Jonathan stood in the cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around him like an elixir of courage and hesitation. He slid into a corner table, where the warm light contrasted the storm outside. As rain drummed against the window, he stared at his phone, the brief but heartfelt message from Lily glowing on the screen. Her warmth felt like the sun breaking through the clouds, yet doubt crept back in like an unwanted guest. What would it mean for him to divulge the complexities of his courage? Would she see him as a fool risking it all for love, or as a man transformed in the furnace of vulnerability? Jonathan questioned how to navigate this tangled web he had woven in his mind. He had always been adept at parsing numbers, but was floundering when it came to emotions. He closed his eyes, attempting to silence the clamor of self-doubt. Instead, memories flooded in. His father's words about needing an unwavering image, the solid foundation of success built on control and precision. And here he was, fumbling with feelings that threatened to topple everything he'd built. Could he still be the formidable businessman everyone knew him to be while wrestling with emotions that gnawed at his very essence? A group of young professionals burst into the cafe, laughter piercing through his thoughts like lightning. He glanced up, quickly averting his gaze. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, bolstered by camaraderie and light-hearted teasing, a stark reminder of the fear he now harbored. Could he still belong to that world while embracing the path he was drawn toward with Lily? As he sat contemplating this crossroad, Jonathan realized he needed to sort through the chaos. Clarity might be hiding beneath the very fears that had paralyzed him. The deeper he dove into his reflections, the more he understood what was at stake. It wasn't just his career or reputation. It was about forging a path that honored both the man he was and the man he yearned to be. With unexpected resolve, he composed a reply to Lily. Clarity poured from him as he typed. He found himself expressing not only his feelings for her, but also his concerns about how his actions might affect her. There was an exhilarating vulnerability in baring his soul, and yet the voice of his father echoed in the chambers of his mind. As he pressed send, a thrill ran through him. Was this not what courage meant? To face oneself amidst the uncertainty, to forge ahead without the guarantee of acceptance? He had taken a risk, not just professionally but personally, a bridge built towards something deeper. His phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a reply from Lily. But before he could read it, the cafe door swung open, and a figure stepped inside. The familiar outline sent a rush of adrenaline through him. It was Lily, looking around until her eyes met his. In that moment, Jonathan saw warmth in her gaze, a beacon guiding him through his storm of fears. She approached his table hesitantly, a slight smile forming. "I got your message," she said softly, pulling the chair out across from him. Her presence was electric, an anchoring force amidst the chaos of his mind. Jonathan's heart raced. Could this be the moment that bridged his two worlds? The conversation began, tentative yet charged, as they exchanged thoughts that spanned the personal and the professional, lifting veils that had once separated them. Yet just as connection crackled between them, Jonathan couldn't shake the looming shadow of consequence. The risk of association with Lily could disrupt more than just his standing. It might send ripples through his carefully curated life. As they conversed, laughter intertwined with sincerity, Jonathan wondered if he could genuinely embrace the path before him. Raising a toast to uncertainty felt so different now, but as the conversation flowed, an unexpected figure loomed in the background, watching intently. A colleague he recognized, someone with ties to the corporate leadership. The uneasy feeling returned, twisting in his gut. This could change everything once more. Jonathan took a deep breath, determined to navigate the converging paths of love and responsibility, unaware of just how far this confrontation would stretch his boundaries. But what he didn't yet know was that this moment would catalyze a choice that would challenge his very perception of success, forever altering the trajectory of his life. Jonathan's heart hammered as he glanced over his shoulder, noting the familiar face that had been tracking the exchange. Mark, a senior executive, had always been an ever-watchful presence, quick to scrutinize anything that might not fit the polished image of their firm. The warmth of the cafe felt suddenly stifling, the air heavy with unspoken implications woven between Jonathan's budding connection with Lily and his relentless career ambitions. "Are you okay?" Lily's voice cut through his reverie, laced with concern. She leaned slightly forward, brows furrowing as she followed his gaze. The softness of her expression contrasted sharply with the tension mounting in his chest. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." Jonathan summoned a smile that was more of a grimace, a fleeting attempt to maintain composure. Balancing life as an emerging leader and the prospect of a romantic connection was intricately daunting. Codependency fell short against the razor-edged demands of his profession. "Sometimes," she said, her gaze steady, "it helps to say it out loud. What's bothering you?" The sincerity in her tone matched the complexity of his thoughts, and for the first time he felt an urge to share more than just surface-level feelings. But could he truly expose the fissures in his carefully constructed facade? As the weight of his decision loomed larger, Jonathan wrestled internally with the implications of bringing Lily deeper into his world. The faux veneer of confidence was built on years of playing it safe, but now it felt as though cracking it could either liberate him or shatter everything he had worked for. She watched him patiently, waiting. "There's someone here I didn't expect to see." Jonathan gestured with a slight nod toward Mark, whose eyes were now scanning the cafe while pretending to engross himself in his phone. A part of Jonathan wished he'd had the courage to steer their conversation toward less treacherous waters. Yet another part felt drawn to her authenticity amidst the tide of uncertainty. "I understand," Lily replied, her voice low but strong. "What other people think shouldn't dictate how you feel or act. What you've built is fantastic, but it's not everything." Her words struck a chord, reverberating through him with an intensity he hadn't anticipated. Did that mean he could navigate the uncharted waters between affection and ambition? The realization settled in his chest. He could still be that capable businessman without sacrificing the greater layers of himself. Desires, fears, vulnerabilities. "I don't think I can hide who I am any more then," he confessed, testing the waters of this new territory. "Not from you. Not from anything or anyone." As conviction coursed through him, he leaned in closer. The ambience shifted, filled with unspoken promises wrapped in shared uncertainty. In that moment, a new surge of strength emerged within him. It eclipsed the restrictive boundaries he had imposed, the standards set by his upbringing, and the societal expectations tethered to his profession. The moment was fragile yet potent, a turning point that could shift his future. Jonathan recognized the power of articulating what had long festered in silence. He could reclaim his narrative, splashing colors on a canvas previously bound in monochrome ambition. But then, without warning, Mark's looming presence shifted from the periphery to an imposing reality as he approached their table. Jonathan's breath caught, the air suddenly thick with a tension he couldn't dispel. "Jonathan, good to see you." Mark's voice held a noticeable edge, a reminder of the stakes tethered to his diligence and reputation. "I didn't realize you had company." Jonathan's heart raced at the challenge unfolding before him. The depth of his emotional honesty collided with the stark reality of professional scrutiny. "Lily, this is Mark, my colleague." Jonathan introduced the two, each word laden with the gravity of his next decision. The moment begged for clarity, pushed him to confront the precarious balance of his world. Caught between authentic connection and the high-wire act of corporate expectation, the very essence of his development was about to be showcased. Would he maintain the facade he had lived under for so long? Or would he defy expectations to nurture the real connection before him? Mark's assessing gaze weighed heavily, a precursor to a judgment he couldn't afford to ignore. As Jonathan took a deep breath, ready to defend his choices, he realized that this interaction would fundamentally test his values in a way he had never anticipated. But was he truly ready to embrace this unfolding tension, a test of his burgeoning identity amidst the shadows of his past? The silence stretched, taut between the three of them, every second a weight pressing against Jonathan's chest. Mark's presence was a stark reminder of the standards he had grown accustomed to under the glint of corporate success. He readjusted himself in his seat, attempting to appear at ease, but his body betrayed him. A subtle twitch of his fingers, a quickened pulse. "Nice to meet you, Mark," Lily said, her voice calm despite Jonathan's rising anxiety. There was a resolve in her eyes that sparked a flicker of hope within him. Perhaps this moment wasn't merely a collision of worlds, a chance encounter that could spiral into chaos. Maybe it was an opportunity. Mark leaned back, an evaluative smile creeping onto his face, the kind that suggested he was considering every nuance of this unexpected encounter. "It's always good to see junior talents engaging in personal pursuits," he said lightly, but his tone carried an edge that made Jonathan bristle. The insinuation lingered, laden with the unspoken challenge of blending his ambitions with introspection. Jonathan caught himself wrestling with a decision, the very idea of authenticity wrestling with the aching need for acceptance and validation. Should he remain that dutiful loyalist to the company's unwritten code, or would he dare push back, even if just slightly, to assert his individuality? "Lily's been great at supporting some initiatives I've been exploring," Jonathan managed to say, forcing the smoothness despite the tremor in his voice. He was unsure if he was playing defense or making a strategic move toward offense. Mark raised an eyebrow, shifting his focus entirely onto Lily. "Are you in the same field then?" "No, but I've been following Jonathan's progress closely and I find it inspiring," she responded, unfazed. There was strength in her posture, a reflection of her own journey that intrigued Jonathan even more. He couldn't shake the sensation that this was a pivotal moment, one that could ignite a shift in how he viewed his role not only in the workplace, but within his personal life too. The internal conflict flared, and he felt the impending weight of a decision that could ripple into every aspect of his existence. "Your ambition is admirable," Mark nodded, but Jonathan could sense an undertone, most likely an inclination that if Jonathan did not toe the line, there would be consequences. Responsibility had often demanded his compliance, yet now he contemplated the notion of emerging as his true self. "I'm grateful for the support," Jonathan said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "But I also believe that success isn't just about corporate achievements. There's value in connections and personal growth as well." The words felt like a fragile bridge he was building, thread by thread. But could he weather the storm that might come with stepping onto this bridge, with Mark's scrutinizing gaze lingering beneath it? Mark's smile faltered, and in that brief moment Jonathan saw a flicker of surprise crossing his face. An unsolicited challenge noticed. He had stepped out of line, and while part of him wanted to withdraw, the other was buoyed by the fragile wings of newfound confidence. "Perhaps," Mark said slowly, his tone cautious. "But let's not forget the bottom line." With that, he leaned slightly back again, as though assessing Jonathan's resolve. Jonathan glanced at Lily, her presence an anchor. She offered a mix of encouragement and empathy, and in that gaze, he found the strength to move forward. The sense of loyalty to his values surged, drowning out the fears that had long shackled him in place. The stakes were high, but for the first time, he was willing to face them. "Mark, I'm aware of the bottom line and I respect my responsibilities. But I also think a strong foundation includes valuing personal connections, not just performance metrics," Jonathan stated, the resonance of his words surging with the urgency of truth. Mark's expression hardened, a hint of challenge flickering in his eyes. "It seems you're drawing lines in the sand, Jonathan. Just remember, this industry rewards conformity." In that moment, Jonathan felt the full force of the crossroads before him. The struggle between self-assertion and advancement lay bare, an unavoidable tension crackling in the air. Could he risk everything he built on the integrity of his personal values? As Mark turned to leave, an ominous undertone hung in the air, leaving Jonathan at the precipice of a tumultuous journey. This confrontation solidified an inner resolve, igniting a sense of purpose that, while daunting, sparked a glimmer of resilience. Jonathan's thoughts raced as he watched Mark walk away. The realization dawned upon him. His need to define who he was and what he stood for loomed larger than ever. But with that definition came a risk he couldn't ignore. The moment had arrived for Jonathan to confront not just his career ambitions, but the man he yearned to be, amid the crises of his personal connections and professional ideals. How far was he willing to go to keep that bridge standing strong? As the cafe buzzed around him, Jonathan could feel the winds of change swirling. He had drawn his line, but how would he defend it in the face of the inevitable pushback ahead? The stakes were only rising, and a crucial decision awaited him, one that could either propel his aspirations forward or lead him down a path of regret. The evening air wrapped around Jonathan like a cool balm, contrasting sharply with the heat of conflict that had simmered moments before. The cafe, once a place of camaraderie and creativity, now felt stifling, the conversation lingering like a shadow. He took a deep breath, focusing on the distant hum of espresso machines and animated voices, his thoughts a cacophony of ambition and fear. Lily remained beside him, her presence a comforting beacon amid the turmoil. "You did well, Jonathan," she said, gently bringing him back to the moment. Her voice had a way of calming the roiling in his stomach, even as remnants of Mark's condescension gnawed at him. Mark needed to hear that. "Did he?" Jonathan replied, doubt lacing his tone. "Or did I just make a target on my back?" The question simmered beneath his breath, the undertones of fear underlying his defiance. She placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "You stood up for what you believe in. That takes courage. Most people will just nod and conform. Don't second-guess yourself." Her confidence reignited something within him. He realized that her belief wasn't just platitude, it was a reflection of the faith she had not only in him, but in the value of authenticity. They had connected on more than just a professional level. They were forging a bond that could withstand the corporate tempest surrounding them. What's next? Jonathan pondered aloud, his mind swirling with possibilities. I can't just sit back and let things spiral out of control. I have to find a way to redefine success for myself. The notion propelled him forward, a vivid commitment sprouting from the ashes of uncertainty. Lily tilted her head, her brows knitting in thought. Maybe it's about exploring ways to integrate your values into your work. The industry needs people who prioritize genuine connections, who lead with empathy. You could be that voice. The spark ignited ideas in Jonathan's mind. What if he proposed initiatives rooted in personal growth, mentoring, and fostering collaboration? They couldn't afford to ignore the human element in this fast-paced environment if they ever hoped to thrive. Could my passion for people be my competitive edge? He thought, visualizing training sessions, team-building workshops, and spaces where employees could share their stories and experiences openly. Yes, he replied emphatically. Yes, that's it. His heart raced with excitement, the fog lifting as clarity cascaded over him. I can create an environment where personal passions merge with professional pursuits. As Jonathan outlined his ideas to Lily, he felt a conviction building within him, transcending the hesitations that had constantly plagued him. Each suggestion seemed to receive life from the shared energy. He dissected the standard practices passing as norms in their industry, and envisioned a new approach grounded in humanity. Yet with this newfound inspiration came a familiar concern. How would the higher-ups react? Mark's warning echoed in Jonathan's head, taunting him with the prospect of confrontation. What if I face resistance? He asked, mostly to himself. The weight of this question loomed ominously as vibrant thoughts of progress met with conceivable obstacles. Lily leaned closer. You can't let fear dictate your path. If this is going to work, you'll need allies during both calm and storm. Jonathan felt the intensity of her gaze. Perhaps this wasn't just about him anymore. If he had the courage to define success on his own terms, he would need to galvanize others to share in this vision. It was one thing to fight for authenticity. It was another to inspire a movement within a corporation known for its rigidity. I'll draft a proposal for next week's team meeting, he declared, heart pounding with determination. I want to showcase my ideas as a way to bolster not just productivity, but morale and engagement within the company. If everything goes well, it might just chart a new course for our entire team. As he spoke, Lily's smile widened, her enthusiasm palpable. The nervous energy that had gripped Jonathan now transformed into a conviction, set to reverberate beyond the confines of their small conversation. He knew there were risks to this venture, but what lay ahead was far more exhilarating than the fear gnawing at him. Maybe what I've been missing all along is that to truly succeed, I don't just need to meet the bottom line. I need to create avenues that allow others to flourish too, Jonathan thought, increasingly aware of the gravity of his own role in shaping the future. As he stood to adjust his thoughts into an actionable plan, the cafe door swung open, ushering in a gust of fresh air, and the unmistakable figure of Mark walked back inside. The tension coiled tightly in Jonathan's chest as he caught the sharp gaze of his superior. This was only the beginning of a much larger battle. Concern surged within him. Had he unwittingly invited conflict by forging a path toward authenticity? How would Mark react? Would his ambitions cost him more than he could afford? Jonathan swallowed hard, the reality setting in that the stakes had never been higher, and that the echoes of his decisions would soon clash directly against the expectations of a corporate world that favored silence over substance. The moment of reckoning was fast approaching, and every heartbeat pushed him closer to that fateful encounter. The sharp clanging of the cafe door reverberated through Jonathan's mind, jolting him from his thoughts. Mark's presence had changed the atmosphere, an electric current weaving through the air. He caught the disdainful tilt of Mark's brow, and suddenly felt small again, dwarfed by the weight of corporate expectations. Guess who's here to save the day? Mark's voice cut through the din like a knife laced with mockery. Jonathan's heart pounded. He longed to respond with confidence, but reservations flooded him. What if Mark's disapproval based on previous encounters would poison the fertile ground he sought to cultivate? Taking a steadying breath, Jonathan steeled himself. The proposal he was about to draft needed pitch-perfect execution. He refused to let Mark's presence intimidate him into submission. "I'm presenting new initiatives in the next team meeting," he blurted before he could second-guess himself. Mark's gaze narrowed, but he merely chuckled. "Oh, really? Initiatives? That's cute. I hope you're not planning to waste my time with naive ideas." Jonathan clenched his fists under the table, a wave of anger mixing with a surge of determination. It struck him. He would channel that anger, not into combativeness, but into a carefully considered approach. "What if I told you those ideas could boost team morale and productivity? Isn't that what we ultimately want?" His tone remained steady, emphasizing a new level of maturity he hadn't possessed before. Mark paused, nonplussed for a fraction of a second. "If it's productive, I'll hear you out, but don't expect everyone to jump on your bandwagon just because you're feeling righteous." Jonathan bit back a retort, realizing it wouldn't help his cause. Instead, he felt Lily's supportive gaze behind him. He shifted focus to the challenge ahead, knowing he needed more than just confrontation. He required strategy. "Lily and I," he began, "are working to create a mentoring program where team members can share their experiences and skills. It could energize the team and ignite collaboration." He watched Mark's response carefully, searching for any flicker of interest. "Sounds great, but I'm not convinced. You think the team cares about sharing experiences?" "They want results, Jonathan," Mark scoffed, his dismissive tone stinging. Jonathan fought back the urge to retreat, understanding that logical rebuttals were necessary. Productivity isn't just about numbers, it's about engagement. When team members feel connected, they work better. Isn't that worth investigating? Mark leaned back, folding his arms as he moved through Jonathan's words like a wary soldier navigating uncharted territory. The challenge ignited something within Jonathan. This wasn't just about proving Mark wrong. It was about wielding his convictions as a true professional. As meetings continued and Jonathan strategized his approach, he pored over feedback from colleagues, cultivating ideas while ensuring they remained grounded in genuine collaboration. He envisioned brainstorming sessions fueled with empathy, discussions that transcended mere obligation. The key would be persuasion, painting a vision that would draw in allies. Days slipped into a rhythm where doubt was met with persistent resolve. Jonathan began to recognize his hidden competencies, his ability to connect authentically, to inspire others to see the potential in each other. Each late night spent preparing for the upcoming proposal translated into newfound confidence, but he still worried about the darkness of Mark's critical eye. What if this wasn't just resistance? What if Mark's dismissal became a barrier so thick it left him stuck? The thought loomed, and with it doubt whispered unsettling memories. He had always been the silent observer, a cog in the machine. Stepping forward now meant battling not only Mark but his own ingrained fears. He had on some level become the person he resented, stifled by passivity. But he was done being that person. "I will be heard," he reminded himself, pushing aside lingering insecurities. As he prepared for the big meeting, a feeling of restlessness settled in the pit of his stomach. The moment was almost here, the stage set for his ideas to either take flight or plummet into failure. With his pulse racing, Jonathan glanced at the meeting agenda. This wasn't merely showing up to pitch ideas. It was a defining moment to wield his voice in a world that preferred compliance over authenticity. But what irked him most was the nagging uncertainty. Did he possess the courage to withstand whatever backlash was waiting? As if anticipating the danger ahead, he steeled himself. This was not going to be a soothing breeze. It was the storm that would define his path forward. The moment of truth was drawing near, and Jonathan could feel the thunder rumbling just beyond the horizon. Would he emerge victorious, or would he be swallowed by the very tides he attempted to redirect? The moment arrived with an unexpected calmness that felt eerily out of place. As Jonathan entered the meeting room, the air quietly buzzed with murmurs, a blend of curiosity and skepticism swirling among his colleagues. He took a deep breath, his resolve palpable as he positioned himself at the front, clutching his presentation notes like a shield. "Thank you all for joining today," he began. He glanced across the table, locking eyes with Mark, whose expression was a mask of disdainful neutrality. It ignited a flicker of determination within him. Today he would peel back layers of doubt, exposing the potential within teamwork, a concept he believed was worth fighting for. Jonathan's voice wavered at first, but he steadied himself as he presented the mentoring program, detailing the plan with vivid imagery and careful structuring. He emphasized the benefits, weaving together passion with logic. Each slide illuminated the vision he'd nurtured over the past weeks, the faces of eager peers transformed by knowledge, teams working in harmony fueled by the authentic connections crafted through mentorship. He glanced at Lily, who offered an encouraging smile. That smile anchored him, a reminder of why he committed to pursuing this initiative in the first place. Yet as he spoke, he could feel Mark's piercing gaze, a tight coil of skepticism. "Engagement leads to better results," Jonathan asserted, pushing forward despite a growing knot in his stomach. "When we invest in our people, we cultivate not just employees but allies, advocates for our shared goals. This program will result in practical outcomes beyond mere statistics." Mark leaned forward, the corner of his mouth twitched. "And what makes you think these employees will suddenly care about sharing their experiences? In a world driven by numbers, you think goodwill will outweigh financial metrics?" The challenge sparked a fire within Jonathan. "Because, Mark," Jonathan responded, a slight edge creeping into his voice, "it's not about goodwill. It's about creating a culture where successes are shared, fostering a sense of belonging that translates directly into productivity. The metrics will follow." He could feel the tension shifting as other team members began to engage. Questions bubbled up and Jonathan welcomed them, seeing not confrontation but an opportunity to clarify. The more he explained, the more he noticed nods of understanding. His peers were intrigued, even enthusiastic. Yet, the clock ticked away in the background, reminding him that time was finite. Mark remained unmoved, a bulwark of resistance. Jonathan wrapped up his presentation, heart firing in his chest, adrenaline rendering him simultaneously exhilarated and exhausted. As he opened the floor for discussion, he shifted his gaze to Mark, expecting the inevitable counterattack. "Okay, let's say we decide to tweak our approach," Mark began, his tone ominous. "How do you plan on integrating these ideas with existing responsibilities without increasing burnout?" The question was valid, and though it felt like a shot across the bow, Jonathan was prepared. "By implementing layered strategies that prioritize mental well-being, we can introduce pilot schemes, incrementally integrating mentorship sessions into existing workflows to avoid overwhelming anyone. I'm not discussing a do-or-die scenario. I propose gradual change that respects current workloads," he explained. As he spoke, Jonathan's confidence burgeoned. Engaging directly with Mark's challenge infused his argument with a dynamic clarity he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just about convincing Mark, it was about demonstrating his capability to lead. The discussion continued, and Jonathan found himself buoyed by the collective insights of his colleagues, their enthusiasm for the program igniting something deep within him. Each voice added nuance to the proposal, morphing a solitary idea into a shared vision. Yet Mark's silence loomed over him like a storm cloud. What if, even with supportive colleagues backing him, Mark remained obdurate, insistent on preserving the status quo? Jonathan refused to let this moment rest solely on the outcome of one meeting. The journey had already transformed him. This was about more than just success. It was about claiming his right to contribute meaningfully. As the meeting wrapped up, Jonathan's mind raced. He was on the precipice of change, yet Mark's thunderous silence echoed in his ears. Would he finally align the team behind him, or would the challenges he faced reel him back to a place of compliance? As the meeting adjourned, Jonathan felt the weight of anticipation settle on him again, pressing down like a heavy shadow. The path forward was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. The real storm was coming and he would have to brace himself for it. What would Mark's response reveal about the depths of resistance he faced, and would Jonathan's newfound courage hold against it? The atmosphere following the meeting felt electric, charged with unspoken words lingering in the air. As Jonathan stepped out of the conference room, he noticed his pulse racing, a mixture of anxiety and excitement thrumming beneath his skin. Mark's words echoed in his mind, but so did the supportive murmurs of his colleagues. This duality ignited a deeper resolve within him. He needed to turn this momentum into decisive action. His mind already raced ahead, planning the next steps. Focusing on demonstrating tangible success, he decided he needed to gather more data, proof that mentoring could lead to measurable improvements. It wouldn't suffice to simply rely on enthusiasm and idealism. He'd need solid evidence that would compel even the most skeptical like Mark. As he returned to his desk, Jonathan felt an unfamiliar layer of purpose envelop him. The chaos of the office, the ringing phones, and busy colleagues began to morph into an intricate web of relationships, one that he now yearned to navigate with a renewed sense of agency. This was no longer merely about a program. This was about cultivating a culture of resilience and support against an undercurrent of dissent. After sifting through a few reports, he discovered data on employee performance metrics from the past years. Jonathan spent hours poring over charts, highlighting dips and peaks, correlating them with internal training initiatives. Each data point ignited another spark of inspiration in him. If he could showcase how targeted mentorship had previously led to increased productivity, perhaps he could penetrate Mark's dense skepticism. That evening, as he worked late with chart after chart illuminating his desk, Jonathan experienced a revelation about his own capabilities. He hadn't just been a passive observer in the corporate world. He was growing into a proactive changemaker. This was no longer just a job. It was a place where he could sculpt his career into one defined by meaningful impact. With a deep breath, he resolved to reach out to those who had previously participated in mentorships, gather testimonials and case studies that would paint a vivid picture of potential within the organization. Perhaps they could articulate a personal story that transformed numerical data into relatable experiences. The next day, buoyed by his new plan, he started scheduling informal chats over coffee. The first was with Sarah, an employee whose skill set had flourished under mentorship. As they sat at the cafe nearby, he listened intently to her journey, her voice reflecting resilience, empowerment, and a tangible sense of gratitude toward the guidance she had received. It was like she was downloading a spark of her experience, and Jonathan's heart raced as inspiration coursed through him. But amidst the excitement, anxiety crept back in. Would her story be enough? With Mark's dispassionate demeanor fresh in his memory, Jonathan understood that relying solely on qualitative stories might not sway those who thrived on cold, hard facts. It was a delicate balance, a fusion of narrative and statistics that would win over not just Mark, but possibly others who mirrored his mindset. As Jonathan drafted notes and pored over the testimonies later that evening, clarity slowly settled in. He wasn't merely on a quest to sell an idea. This was an expedition of deeper self-discovery. Every conversation peeled back layers of doubt, revealing a core thrumming with ambition. But conflicting shadows inevitably lay just beyond the veil. Mark's looming opposition was still present, a specter that would require more than eloquent words and data. Jonathan fell asleep that night with a mix of optimism and trepidation. It was time to confront the very essence of his fears directly. Would he have the resilience to shield himself from Mark's criticism while sustaining his vision for the future? The moment approached where he'd either have to present a united front, a coalition of testimonies and data, or risk facing Mark's biting critique alone. How would he adapt to ensure both his professional aspirations and personal convictions remained intact? The stakes were rising, and Jonathan could no longer avoid the inevitable clash. What would that confrontation unleash in him, and would he be prepared for the consequences? The day had arrived, an intersection of ambition and vulnerability that Jonathan had prepared for with painstaking detail. As he stood before the gathered team, the meeting room humming with anticipation, his pulse quickened. This wasn't just a proposal anymore. This was a declaration of his commitment to usher in a new culture within the walls of his company, one grounded in genuine connection and mentorship. "I appreciate everyone being here today," Jonathan started, his voice steady yet infused with an undercurrent of adrenaline. He scanned the faces. Expressions of curiosity, skepticism, and open support mingled throughout the group. Mark sat at the far end, arms crossed, embodying a challenge Jonathan had prepared for but still felt intimidated by. "It's time we redefine success," Jonathan continued, his passion igniting the room. With each word, he moved closer to his vision, combining stories with evidence. He shared testimonials from colleagues like Sarah, whose trajectories had changed because of mentorship. Their words, he hoped, would resonate deeper than cold graphs, drawing in hearts and minds alike. "Each voice here represents potential," he proclaimed, displaying visuals that echoed the analytical data he'd meticulously prepared. "Metrics tell a story, but they are lifeless without the human experience behind them." He laid out the correlation between mentorship programs and increased productivity, revealing trends that could not be easily dismissed. Mark's brow furrowed, his eyes calculating as Jonathan pushed onward, leveraging the collective energy in the room. When team members feel supported, they take ownership, they engage, and the bottom line not only improves, but we cultivate a workforce that thrives in unity. The room began to shift subtly, colleagues leaning in, immersed in the narrative weaving through statistics. As Jonathan transitioned to the actionable aspects of his proposal, he caught Mark's critical gaze, but this time he didn't flinch. Mark's inevitable challenges loomed ahead, and yet Jonathan felt a newfound resilience within him. In confronting his obstacles, he was not only advocating for change, he was redefining his own identity as a leader. "What makes you think these programs will actually stick?" "This isn't just an idea, Jonathan, it's a gamble," Mark interjected, his skepticism sharp and unwavering. Jonathan inhaled, summoning the calmness forged from weeks of preparation. "Because it's not just about one more checklist. We're cultivating relationships that inspire loyalty and productivity. Everyone in this room has the power to become a mentor and mentor others. It's about grassroots engagement transforming our culture from within." The words poured forth, heavily laden with conviction. That statement caught fire. Murmured acknowledgement spread through the room as Jonathan turned back to his presentation, reinforcing the argument with enthusiasm. Stories of his colleagues intertwined with his vision, solidifying that this wasn't solely his initiative, it was theirs to build together. As the conversation flowed, Jonathan's initial nervousness transformed into excitement, each comment from his peers revealing enthusiasm for the journey ahead. It felt as though he was not just leading a meeting, he was casting a vision of hope, a tapestry waiting to be woven by the hands of his team. The discussion erupted into exchanges of ideas, excitement buzzing like electricity. For each question raised, Jonathan felt his responses growing stronger, marked by authenticity and clarity. With each participant taking ownership of his vision, Mark's solitary stance dimmed, encountering the waves of collaborative energy surrounding them. Finally, after an arduous back and forth, Mark's demeanor shifted slightly. "So you believe this will alter our corporate culture?" he chided, but with a hint of curiosity creeping into his voice. Jonathan seized the moment. "No, this will be the awakening of our culture. We allow people to grow, connect, and be recognized for their worth. We'll see our results speak for us. This is the turning point we need." There was a moment of silence, a charged pause before Mark finally broke the tension, seemingly torn between dismissal and cautious curiosity. "Fine, you have my attention. But you'll need to prove it in the next quarter. I won't let the team dive headfirst without tangible metrics." It wasn't agreement, but neither was it outright disapproval. Jonathan nodded, relief flooding through him. "I welcome the challenge. Together we will show how personal connection can unleash performance." As discussions continued with renewed vigor, Jonathan felt a deep sense of accomplishment sweeping over him. The culmination of his fears transformed into an opportunity for growth. He had stepped onto a path that demanded his authentic self. Looking back at Mark, he realized that he had not just survived this encounter. He had emerged victorious, fortified by the strength of his team and newfound clarity regarding his own worth. In that moment, he understood what it meant to be an effective leader, capable of balancing the demands of ambition and humanity. After the meeting, as colleagues approached Jonathan to express support and enthusiasm, he felt an incredible lightness fill the air. From the shadows of doubt to the empowerment of collective voice, he had found his place, embracing an identity built on competence, connection, and courage. Success had never been solely about numbers. It hinged on relationships. And in the wake of that pivotal meeting, Jonathan Blake had not only transformed his trajectory at work, he had rekindled his passion for leadership, establishing a legacy far beyond the cold confines of profit. With a clearer vision on the horizon and a dedicated team behind him, he knew this was merely the beginning. A journey that would not only redefine his career, but change the lives of those around him. Jonathan faced the future unfettered, holding on to a well-earned confidence forged through resilience. This was it. He had conquered the hurdles of perception, proving to himself and to others that true influence comes from valuing authenticity over appearances. The corporate climb ahead was steep, but he was ready, fueled by nothing less than a profound sense of purpose, uniting ambition and altruism for the journey ahead. Now, seeking the excitement surrounding his newfound journey, Jonathan couldn't shake the desire to share this experience with others. He urged the urgency of connection and transformation in his path, because authenticity was the most powerful force in the corporate landscape. You need to subscribe now to witness more transformative journeys like Jonathan's. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover tales of personal triumph. Comment below and share your thoughts about how Jonathan's breakthrough reflects your own passions and struggles. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait, even one more second, to inspire and connect with those around you.